Hola, clase. I just want to talk to you for a couple of minutes about the Noticias Nacionales assignments. By now, you've investigated a little bit about your country of choice this semester, and hopefully you've gotten some feedback or had a chance to look at the feedback that you've gotten on that first assignment that you did. And perhaps you've already read ahead and looked at what the requirements are going to be for the remainder of the semester. So I'm going to be looking at that document with you right now, and if you want to get it out, you have it in your packet. It's also available on Moodle. So for starters, like we mentioned in class, you are going to be reading at least one article every week from an online journal that's published in your country. Hopefully you've already had a chance to kind of be exploring some of those news journals that are available. There are lots, and there's a link on the Moodle page to help you find one if you haven't been able to yet. So by now, I hope that you've read at least one journal article, but if you haven't, go ahead and do that as soon as possible. And then we're going to do 4 Noticias Nacionales assignments over the course of the semester, and those will correspond to the news articles that you've read. So every time we have one of those due, and the first one is next week, you want to choose one article to focus on for that assignment. Okay, every time we have one of these 4 assignments due, you're going to peer edit something that you've written about that article, and we'll take time in class for that peer editing. So you need to produce 4 rough drafts over the course of the semester, and those rough drafts really need to be printed out. We need hard copies of those to work with in class. Please don't bring it on your computer for your peers to edit electronically. We're going to do those in person and on paper. So please don't forget to print those out, and I recommend printing them in advance in case you encounter any printer problems. You want to give yourself a little bit of margin. You should also bring 2 copies of the rough draft if you can, so that you can get the perspective of 2 of your peers. Okay, so next week we have on Tuesday our first in-class peer editing session, and everyone needs to bring a rough draft to that editing session. Okay, and I'll walk you through the process of peer editing in class. You're ultimately going to submit only 2 polished assignments of those 4, but you do need to produce a solid rough draft for each one of them in order to participate fully in the activities of class on those days, and also in order to receive the points for the assignments. And then for each of the graded, polished assignments, you're going to fill out a self-evaluation form worth 5 points. So that's kind of the basics. And as we scroll down here, as we scroll down here on the page, we can just read through it together. It says, you should be following the news from your chosen country on a weekly basis, if not more frequently. And when a Noticias Nacionales assignment is due, you will choose for that assignment the most interesting of the recent articles that you have read. Now, these articles can be about any topic that's of interest to you, but you should walk away from having read it knowing a little bit more about that country, understanding a little bit more about the culture, having expanded your vocabulary, etc. So if you're interested in fashion, okay, you can read articles about fashion, but as you're reading, make sure that you're being thoughtful about the content and not just reading a review about scrunchies or something and their comeback, but really thinking about connections between that target culture and your culture, comparisons between the two. What are the similarities? What are the differences? What do you know now that you didn't know before? You might even read articles that are about things going on in the United States, but the fact that they're written from the perspective of someone living in another country will give you an interesting insight into that culture and thought process. Again, the article can be about whatever topic you choose, but you do need to get something cultural and linguistic out of it. So keep that in mind as you're choosing your articles. Some articles will lend themselves better to cultural insights. You know, if you read an article on politics, well, you're going to learn something about that culture. You might have to dig a little bit deeper if you're reading an article about social media or something like that. So keep that in mind. And I would encourage you to read articles on a variety of topics over the course of the semester. You might be super into soccer, and you're definitely going to find a lot of articles about soccer, but I would encourage you to branch out a little bit and explore other areas like international relations and internal politics, etc. Okay, so we'll peer edit in class on those designated days, and unfortunately, there's not a way for you to get those peer editing points back if you happen to miss one of those class periods. Usually, you know, I'm pretty flexible about assignments if you need to turn something in late. As long as you communicate with me, I tend to be pretty flexible about that, but the peer editing points can only be earned by participating in the in-class peer editing session. So please keep that in mind. Alright, so after peer editing the composition in class, you're going to submit the assignment on Moodle, and that's 2 of the 4 essays. So polish 2 of them, so that you're presenting your very best work, and those 2 of the 4 will be submitted on Moodle, and you'll get some feedback from me on 2 of those. If you want to submit more and get more feedback, that's perfectly fine. The way it's set up in the Moodle gradebook is to take your highest 2 scores of the 4. So if you want to submit them all and just have Moodle take the highest 2 scores that you get, that's perfectly fine. So as I said, the essay should reflect your strongest writing and integrate knowledge from English writing classes and Spanish language classes. So use what you already know about good writing, paragraph structures, sentence structures and variation, words that are linking words, that transitional words, words like however and therefore, and I can provide a list of some of those common words and phrases for you in Spanish upon request. Okay, so the written portion itself is going to consist of a short written summary of the article, and this part really should be the smaller portion of the essay. Something that where you just quickly summarize the article for me. It's a way for me to see that you've understood what you've read. I'm just going to close the window because there's a lot of noise going on outside. Okay, hopefully that's better. So yes, a short written summary of the article, again, short, just enough for me to get a quick taste of the article, what was going on in that article, and to show me that you understood what you read. And then the more important part is your reflection on what you've read. Okay, so in your reflection, I want to hear you not just regurgitate information and say this is what happened, but I want you to maybe pose some questions like, this is what I thought when I read this, and I was left with these questions. It makes me wonder this, and it reminded me of another article that I read, or something that happened in my life, or something that's happening in my country, and so on and so forth. So I want it to be very personal and very higher order thinking skills, if you're familiar with the pyramid of thinking skills. So, yeah. Then your composition, as far as length goes, 250 words is not really very much. I don't think you can probably do a good quality reflection, summary, and reflection in only 250 words. That's just the very lowest end of the word count. And at least 5 sentences need to pertain to the reflection. So the reflection needs to be the more substantive part of your assignment. So let's scroll down. As you can see, you might need to do additional research if maybe the article deals with a topic that you aren't personally very familiar with. You might need to dig a little bit deeper, go outside the article to fill in some of those blanks. And then this is very important, this note. I absolutely need to be able to read the article. And so I recommend that you not only provide me with the link to the article in your assignment, but also maybe copy and paste the contents into a Word document just to have as a backup, because depending on the journal that you're reading from, sometimes when I follow the link, it might say, oh, this article is not available anymore, expired, or something like that. And I really, really, really need to be able to read the article in order to grade your assignment. And there are a number of reasons for that. So please do everything you need to do to make sure that I'm going to have access to that article, a week or so after you've submitted the assignment, so that I'm able to grade it. That's very important, okay? All right, so if we go down to the grading components, format should be just easy peasy. It's the same for each assignment, and I've spelled it out for you very clearly right there. And then if we go down further, an accurate summary of the article. Again, this does not have to be long. It does not have to be very substantial. I just need a way to be able to ascertain that you have understood what you've read. You really need to watch out for plagiarism here. That absolutely won't be tolerated, so please do your part to know plagiarism, understand what that is and what constitutes plagiarism, because sometimes students might say, well, I didn't just copy and paste it, that's not plagiarism, but that shows not a full understanding of what plagiarism is. So please be sure you understand plagiarism and don't do it in this assignment, okay? Your personal reaction to the article, it's a very important part. You need to reflect on what you've read in at least 5 sentences. Okay, I want to hear from you, not just objectively, this is what I read, but here are my subjective thoughts about it. Okay, grammar and length. Here, very important, 6 points. Your compositions must include 2 highlighted examples of the subjunctive. So I want to be stretching you already right away this semester, 2 examples of the subjunctive, and for you that's going to be the simple present subjunctive at this point until we start exploring other subjunctive forms. I suppose you could also use the subjunctive of the future informal. We learned that in a lab period. And at least one example of at least one of those 2 highlighted examples of the subjunctive must be adverbial. If you look on your notes sheet, I think it's the first sheet or one of the first sheets in the notes section of your course packet, there is a document that is called something like phrases that are always followed by the subjunctive, or phrases that demand the subjunctive, or something like that. The document's also available on Moodle. And in the bottom right hand, so if you're looking at the screen, this part of the document, you're going to see some asterisks next to a bunch of adverbial clauses. And I want to really push you to use those adverbial clauses this semester. And you don't really need to know why they're called adverbial. It's because they function as adverbs. But the point is, they're not as intuitive for us as native English speakers, and so you need to kind of force yourselves to start using them in context. And if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to talk more with you about that, and we will be addressing it more in class as the semester goes on. So don't forget to highlight those examples of the subjunctive for me. And then vocabulary. I want you to use this as an opportunity to expand your vocabulary. So learn at least 2 new terms through each one of these assignments. Use them not just in a quote from your article. Please use quotes very sparingly, but use it in an original sentence in your composition. Underline it, and then at the bottom, define the words. And I don't mean provide the English translation. I mean, give me a definition for the words. What do you understand them to mean? Describe it in Spanish, okay? And then here, a separate grade item is the rough drafts, which we talked about. Again, they absolutely need to be hard copies that you bring to class, and I apologize for any inconvenience there. And then the self-evaluation is a separate grade item, which we talked about. So I hope this has been informative. I really look forward to our peer editing session on Tuesday. Please hold each other accountable. Don't forget to bring those hard copies to class, and don't hesitate to contact me if you have any questions about this assignment. Of course, we'll have an opportunity to talk about it on Tuesday as well. Thanks very much. Que pasen muy bien el fin de semana. Chaucito. Bye.